Nana, so I want to start the conversation by asking you one question, which is, if you could go back in time, what one piece of advice would you give to your younger self? And I'm talking about like 18 to 20 years old.
What I'll give, advice I'll give myself younger would be more take time in getting to know yourself. It's okay not to have all the answers now.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's the thing. I think we all grow up in a way of needing to achieve something straight away and
Yeah,
having all the answers, and really you're evolving. And it's
yeah.
not just physically, but it's also mentally. So I would go back and say just it's cool.
So what did you want to do at that time? Do you remember? Like, what was your ambitions?
My ambitions, like, definitely playing sports as well,
Yeah,
was one of my key
okay.
ambitions.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I wanted to make some sort of change because I felt I was quite annoyed at not just at my circumstance, but the circumstance of my community.
Okay.
And like from very early, I had that
Yeah,
annoyance
yeah.
of like feeling like a victim
Okay.
or wronged
Yeah,
in some way.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I've always had that in me naturally.
Yeah,
I think my parents will call it as distractive.
yeah, yeah.
Didn't follow rules or
Okay.
it's just little things like that. So that's what I'll probably give myself in terms of like just listen and understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you don't know the whole story yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you will have the answer once you get the full information.
Okay. So, did you have like a career path in mind? Did you know what you wanted to do?
I didn't. I mean, I wanted to be in the army.
Okay.
I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a counselor. Like I wanted to do something of service.
Okay.
If
All
that
right.
makes sense.
Okay.
So I wanted to be. My both parents were police officers. So
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to have a work in something of service, but not for the institution.
Okay. Yeah,
It
yeah,
sounded
yeah,
mad. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to do something around the lines where I was on the front line, but I was serving.
Okay. So then, how do we get to BADU Sports? Like, at what point did you start that?
I started that in a way of like when I played football. I think I got injured, and a friend of mine just asked me to come and help him in one of the schools.
Okay.
And then within that, I started to understand, and I think things kept coming back in terms of the challenges our children and our community face within the education system, and,
Yeah.
and the knowledge and inspiration that they needed to see in terms of how we hearing them. And I think from there, I started to utilize and understand the knowledge of what sports does for me.
Yeah.
So in my rage of wanting things to happen, I was still part of a team
Yeah.
that achieved something.
Okay.
I understood my role,
Yeah,
I understood
yeah,
the mission. So that's what sports did. And so BADU Sports was kind of formed out of a activist mindset, but
Yeah.
more or less like utilizing like almost strategic concept
Yeah.
of how we're going to achieve this.
But what made you start something by yourself? Because you was obviously like working in your friend's company. What made you feel like, no, I want to start my own thing? Like, what was that?
I felt like there were things that we wasn't doing enough with. So rather than complaining, I just felt like we still wasn't digging deeper to
Okay.
the issue.
Yeah.
I felt we were being surface, like, and so the aspects of like delivering sports and doing sports was very good. Everyone did it and went home.
Yeah.
But we didn't understand what that path would look like and how that child or that person turned up the next day.
Okay.
And what happened in the things that we couldn't control.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it was just not good enough to say we can't control that. They just got to come and do fitness and go home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so that's what kind of happened in order for me to do that. And then said like, right, we need more like autonomy. I honestly need to be in control of, and my wife will always say like, but I do need to be in control of a situation when it comes to what happens to me next, or my children, or
Yeah.
like I just feel like it's no good just throwing your hands in the air.
Yeah, okay. So did you have a plan? Did you know, okay, I'm going to start BADU Sports. This is what we're going to do. Like, how far did you plan?
So my first planning was to understand more the education system. What was the missing
Okay.
link? What did I not know? I only knew surface, once again, I only knew surface about
Yeah.
what was not happening, but I had to see what was happening really well and then learn from that to add in, add in the gaps.
Okay.
And the gaps is essentially for me is BADU.
Yeah.
So the organisation has been brought in and is built and got to where it is because we're doing things that we're missing.
Okay, okay. So what did BADU start off being, and then what is it now grown to become?
So it was very much about like sports as a vehicle, educate, empower, uplift, broaden the mindsets of young people, not just in a way of like society aspect. It's just more or less they're seeing their talent, learn about their emotions. You win, you lost, how you fit into a system. Just speaking about like or supporting them in their most tangible wins, but also becoming like we also wanted to be the other side of like everything in their system in their life was quite tragic, or you're in trouble at school. At first as well, a lot of the schools will use us as like mentors or someone who had to deal with behaviour. A lot of schools that had black coaches or black mentors or someone was seen as someone that. So we wanted to be the person to say to education, yeah, sure, send them to us. But what we said to the children was different. So BADU had to be the gap of going, hey, I heard that happen, but should we look at this in a certain way, rather than being someone who's going to tell you off. It's exploring that.
Well, let's rewind a little bit. How did you start? Like, how did you get into the schools? Like, I know you was working with some schools through your friend, but like, how did you get your first contracts? Like, how did you know that this is what you needed to do?
So it's like, we will all go in debt for education. So we'll give time, we'll actually pay for the opportunity to get a degree, and then we hope that can be paid off. I did the same thing of going, I'm going to go and volunteer in schools. I'm going to listen, learn, I'm going to give up my time, I'm going to learn in the trade. And that's how I started. And then we then became like the work we were doing, the gaps that I was saying that was there, I had to prove it. So by volunteering, no one's going to tell you to pay for something if you haven't like had evidence about it. In their minds, everything's fine. So when one school started to improve, I think we had one Ofsted inspection in one of the schools that I was volunteering, and Ofsted wrote an amazing report about just every child interviewed was almost saying that they look forward to coming to school because they feel listened to, seen, and they compete. And love to learn. Kept putting that attribute to ourselves when the parents' voices was that, and I didn't know we were doing that. I was just learning in that space. And so that's how it started.
So when you say we, like who was we?
I'll say, well, not we, me, myself. It was me. It was me, one, because I had to do the learning, but it then expanded because, and how it expanded was just once again, one school saying yes, and then educators and people talk. People always give a good recommendation to something that made them feel a certain way. Does a good job, and that's how it kind of spread.
So you just started off as, one man going into a school saying, I want to run this after school club, or was it PE?
Just volunteer, do some PE, give my services. I've got expertise. I had time. I had I felt like I had expertise as well within that space, and so that's how it started. And then it just we became essential. So
did you study?
So sports science was something I studied at college. But then I did business management as a degree. Because African parent. You can't like so. But it just combined in terms of the ethics around that as well. I think if you study whatsoever, it's not just one direction. And so that was.
So when you was in the schools volunteering, did you have a plan to start BADU Sports?
No. I'll say no, because if I say yes, I'll be lying. I didn't. I was still on my activism mission of learning and how we can better the experiences of my community.
So then how does it then become a business? Like, what was that point?
Like, honestly, through the whole aspect of more people wanting my services, then going, well, I can't do it alone. Then taking on someone, but also asking advice. I remember it was one of the head teachers who sat with me because of like the payment structure. You needed to be set up as a company also for them to pay you. She sat with me to set up the company in terms of like, this is the form you fill in. And that's why like I constantly make sure that the organisation is done in a way that serves other people that are trying to do the same thing. Because it was someone who had a knowledge about that space and said like, we want to pay you, we need to pay you. This is what we need to have in order to pay. This is what you need to kind of, and then that's.
So at that moment in time, you didn't really know. You just like, it's just money coming in. That's just life. I'm just living off the money.
And it wasn't money life because I always had ambitions. I mean, I was born in Ghana, so like coming from Africa, like I've always had ambitions to because when you're almost here, you almost don't feel like you belong. If you've come from somewhere else, you don't know the differences. So my whole aspiration was to, if I work like maybe our parents did when they first came here, work hard and you build back home. That was my thing of like, it wasn't just money's coming in survival. I almost wanted to try and go like, what's next? But also, I wasn't saving for a rainy day, if that makes sense. I was saving for the next opportunity.
Okay.
Like,
so that's different.
Because I don't believe in just existing. I always feel like there's a purpose, and my faith aligns with that. So
So then you started, getting contracts with schools and stuff, and then there was a kind of a transition in the business to then now becoming like this huge thing. Like, what was that point where you did you feel like you had to pivot? Was it a plan to pivot, or like how did that come about?
It came about with my openness to learn.
Okay.
Because I'm very comfortable with not knowing, like, because it gives me an opportunity to know. I feel like most people, even when you're starting a business and so on, like, stop thinking you, like I said, the message to my younger self. And to pivot came from going, right, we are now at a point where we've got X amount of staff, X amount of schools. Where are my points where I don't know? So I don't know about the things I can't control. So it comes back, the pivot comes from what I couldn't control. I couldn't control the standard of the messaging at first of what we were doing. So the pivoting aspect was like, right, let's refine this. Let's almost stop taking new schools. Let's make sure we conduct in a way where the staff are better trained. Where's our training ethos? Once again, why did I get into this? Because there was a gap. So have I made sure our staff are doing this? How do we develop our own training programs? Because it will still be the same system that trains them if I don't do it. So that's how the organization constantly looking at going back, almost revert back to start. What was the key activism movement that you wanted to do differently? And use that as your basis. And I say the business transformation, what has helped me is making sure I keep sticking to the gap in the market that I looked at, or the gap or the opportunity that was in there.
So how did you manage that growth? Like, was there growing pains?
Oh, there hugely. Hugely. There was financial growing pains. There was tax stuff that was just like, what do you mean you're taking half of this or 40% of this type of thing? But there was a growing pain in terms of managing people. And although I might have this mad passion and purpose and so on, some people are just coming to work, get money and go home. They don't have, and nothing wrong with that. It's just me understanding that and not expecting to see myself in everybody else. That was a growing pain for me because I'm hugely, as you can tell, I'm hugely emotional and passionate about what I do. I'm quite focused on what the outcomes need to be. So, but what I had to do is, once again, go back to my learning hat and go, well, what's the assets in terms of what, and also what have I learned from sports? Some people might not be able to do 50 million different things on the pitch. But they can do these things which is effective to what you need. So get what you need to get within that, which ultimately helps the movement.
So did your business degree help in like the structuring of the business and the teams and stuff like that?
No. I know it sounds bad, but no. Because I think you can learn so much like within education just to get through. I did my things in education to get through. It was to serve a purpose, which is have I appeased my parents and society? Have I, because I still didn't know what I wanted to do. But I'll say the learning of being in an education institution was looking at how they manage, speaking to mentors, like, which is huge. Seeing how other people do it as well, never thinking you know it all. Constantly reading up on stuff, having conversations. But I was so determined on how do I also do it differently.
So what is BADU now? Because we started off in the schools, but we're much bigger now. So what is BADU now?
So we are a multi-dimensional community development organisation. So we do this in 3 core pillars as an organisation. So sports is still our first pillar that we do around sports and physical activity and health and well-being. But then we have a community and placemaking pillar, which is our second pillar, which is about how do you put the people at the heart of making the changes? How do they almost have ownership of what you're working towards. If we're doing something, how do they own it, and how they're going to pass it on in terms of legacy aspects?
Okay.
And that's the bit about community and placemaking, which is our cafes, our activities, our family events that we do around that as well. All of that are proud to be our Black History stuff, whatever, our Christmas camp. These are all community and placemaking, which community owns.
Yeah.
And then our final pillar is our education, workforce development, and mentorship.
Okay.
Which is the throughput of meeting people, navigating where you belong, but success.
Yeah.
Like how do you go off to win? And then I think education, mentoring, and workforce development. It's about direct access into whatever space that needs to happen, but also where's the knowledge gap that needs to be bridged.
Yeah.
So we're constantly looking at where is the knowledge gap that our community doesn't get. So I think 3 weeks ago we ran a project 2%, which done by our young people, which is getting more Black faces in corporate spaces. But they run the event. Over 280 young people signed up, sold out in a certain, and it's all run by ages below 23. Like that, put on a conference. Four people below age of 23 put on a conference for their community because there's a gap.
Okay.
But that's workforce development. That's knowledge, that's education, that's mentoring, but that's even more so, that's community and placemaking. Because they've built that community.
Yeah.
And they've made it into what they
So
need.
was this all a vision of yours, like at the beginning? Or is this something that's just like happened?
I have a massive belief that if people are given the fair knowledge and skills and training, it's like sports, right? If you get the same training and opportunities and environment, we don't know what choices people will make in terms of thriving. If you don't, you're going to divert into survival mode. So everything about us, and when I talk about a vision, my vision is very much of how do we get them to a space, and we have no idea what their destination will be, but we now know that they've got the tools, and what would you do with those tools? And then it expands.
So what has been like your biggest barrier that you have faced, up until this point? The biggest hurdle, shall I say? Because it wasn't a barrier, because you've obviously got past it.
Biggest hurdle was to, I won't say, I was going to use the word chill a bit, but more or less like keep backing myself.
Okay.
Because there's moments of doubts. And not just, it's the ambition too big.
Okay.
Because I was told it was too big. Like, so more and more people say this is really great, but should we concise it? Should we box it up? So the biggest barrier of it was me just going, right, cut out the noise, relax, you've got this, and just learn from where you are.
Okay. And on a positive note, what has been your biggest wins?
Biggest wins? I think almost my faith being reaffirmed.
Okay.
Personally, I think my faith has been more reaffirmed in terms of I wasn't wrong about how I felt, because I 100% feel so much joy when I see my community wins. Okay.
So how big is BADU now? Like, how big's the company?
It's not that big. It's not that big. We're like, we've grown, like, obviously over the years. It's been 16, 17 years of doing this. So it's not, if it didn't reach a certain point, I will be quite disappointed in the message.
But I mean, like, how many people have you served?
Oh gosh. Like, so before COVID, we used to serve over 22,000 people per week as an organisation.
And you said you're not that big.
Yeah. And then pre-COVID, like, and if you judge me on how big we are, I would say how many people we were able to support during COVID who were in dire straits. So we were matching some of the council's reach.
Wow.
So in terms of being serviced, in terms of serving people that were underserved or in need during COVID. So that's what, I know there's other stuff around our members of staff of like 30, 40 staff in schools, 18 in the office team, and then maybe more in the after school.
So how big is the team in total?
So total, we probably have about 60, 65 people in our team so far. We are downsizing a little bit because it's hard to sustain and keep the quality. So I'm always downsizing to get back into and reframe and go back. And then we've now got a team in Africa as well that we're doing stuff with as well. So that's also like
Yeah.
the work is now. I feel like that is getting to that point as well.
So is that like the next step for you?
Yeah, I think the next step is more national here.
Okay.
Africa and the global world is always still going to be the next step, but I'm always making sure I solidify and know what we're doing here, and then pass on, once again, share that knowledge for that community and placemaking to take place.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned that, you know, you was matching what the local authorities were doing, and I've seen that, you know, BADU have done some work with the mayor's office. Could you expound a little bit more on that kind of stuff that you're doing?
Okay, so as an organisation, we've worked with local authorities, mayor's office, with brand partners, but what we're doing now, I think, is just more around consulting with them, supporting and educating other community organisations. I'm very big, I mean, where we are now is very big on sharing that knowledge to leaders that want to look at a different way of achieving their goal or a different way of leadership.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that is what makes our strength. If you're a leader and you're constantly like learning, listening, but also acting on what you know. So I want to share the knowledge of the journey. We've had 16, 17 years of this. There are challenges and barriers that haven't moved. That's probably moved a tiny inch. How do I give that knowledge? So that's what working with the mayor's office or with other partners on doing it, and we're making sure that our partners understand that. But we're more, as an organisation, we're not trying to prevent anything. So I always want people to understand, BADU, we are not trying to prevent anything. All we're trying to do is progress things. For anyone we work with and so on. So when we work with partners, it's all about what the deeper impact will be, but also what the deeper progression will be, and how are we leaving a legacy, and how are we doing it with the legacy.
So how did you get into those rooms?
So one of the things I looked at with sports, there was a point where I felt like the coach didn't like me, just didn't like how but if I'm scoring the most goals and playing that well, you have to pick me. So that's how I got into those rooms. To make sure that I'm working so hard that you cannot deny what we're doing. You cannot ignore it. And then therefore you haven't allowed me into those rooms. I've earned the right to be in those rooms. So once again, when I talk about my community, it's like we have to stop waiting to be invited. BADU is very much of building our own table. So now that the table's doing something, how do we come into those rooms as parity? Rather than can you fit into this framework?
So in terms of like the business, is it self-funded? Have you had external funding? How's that work?
So we've had external funding from partners, but I won't say funding, I'll say investment. Because the work we do is return to investment to society. So and as you notice, I'm very key about certain words and terminology, just because we have to be aware that the work you're doing is what people want done. And you're providing value. Exactly. And then there's a social value calculator that people kind of like do often. It's just going, well, this is the value that it returns back to it. So, but also as an organisation, the reason why when I started the organisation, because we've got BADU Sports and then BADU Community, so there's two organisations. But BADU Sports essentially wanted to do the job of BADU Community, and support the community, but we couldn't do it under the status in which community organisation was expected to work. So BADU Sports... Meaning in terms of how do you prevent knife crime? How do you do this? All the poverty metrics. We didn't want to label our children and community. We felt humbled to be meeting them. So for us, we needed to find a way, because and also if you don't have any money, don't go and talk somewhere with your chest. So we had to. So we now we were funding ourselves. For the first 12 years of the organisation, it was BADU Sports funding. All my directors' dividends went back into the organisation to ensure that we were doing. So I just back what I was saying. So then you now have a CAF. Yes.
How was that process, and how did we get there? Why do we have a CAF now?
We the process is something, Austin, about I always think about our culture, places to sit, eat, talk, community feel. We in our culture are always gathering, in a certain way. We
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
conversation. We don't see each other for so long, but we feel at home. So the cafe was more around that in terms of like bridging the gap with this connective aspect of how best we can serve our community. But for us as well, it's very much about community cohesion. How can other communities kind of get involved and learn and share as well? But it's also about also sustainability for us as an organization. Once again, we can't keep relying on investment. If we get it, it's excellent. But how can we also build a model that also is self-sustainable? So, for instance, we wanted to do more around women and girls, particularly Black and global majority women and girls, to support that stream. And relying on the system that hasn't supported women and girls in general, like to say, oh, can you now look at us in terms of our community when we're the lowest of the poor? We need to build a business that generates profits, which means that when it comes in, we're saying this goes into supporting the community in this way. So, and then also like one of the key things as well is around like regeneration. So where we are, the cafe, huge regeneration is taking place. The existing people that were there before have almost been removed in their connection to the space. And the new people that have come in also feel like they're not connected to the history of the space. So we also, once again, the cafe is almost like a bridge as well. Like come and connect. You can come in here. If the prices of the next cafe is £4 something, we will make it like cheaper if we can. And then make sure that once again, the profits goes back into the business. And then you don't have to worry when you're walking here. But also if you've just moved into the area and you want to connect to the local community, just come and sit in the cafe and connect and have V&A workshops and supper clubs and conversations and then just somewhere to sit. We also looked at mental health aspects that there's a lot of loneliness at the moment within our community. So we looked at having a space of people that are suffering with mental health, loneliness, isolation. Like we have a slogan on our cafe where it says someone is sitting in the shade today because somebody planted the tree a long time ago. So everything we do is around like making sure that space is there for you to relax, get some respite, get some information, connect with yourself, with anyone else, and off you go. Book sharing space as well, so pick up a book, leave one, take one. Don't sign anything. If you're taking something from the we don't ask you to sign anything. If you don't bring it back, you don't bring it back. It wasn't ours in the first place in terms of blessings. It's like off you go.
So what is your future vision for BADU?
To keep pushing the bandwidth of excellence within our community. So we see talent. When we see, so from very, very start, I said like we feel honoured to meet the people we get to serve, regardless of their trauma or their challenges or their poverty background or success or whatever. Our next thing is like, is there more? And it goes back to my very first aspect. Is there more we should be doing? So now that we're having people and they're doing really well, where is the place that develops their physical and mental literacy? How are we building and programs and things that allows them to compete at the very highest elite level? Are we making sure those access to those elite high levels are tangible to them, so they can go and compete, and then hopefully they can get a return into their investment?
And you mentioned earlier about national. Where do you see BADU going like nationally?
Definitely having more of what we do in other spaces, but more or less sharing the work and consulting on that with other community leaders. I'm not even, it sounds crazy, I'm not trying to have BADU everywhere and we're doing this. This is time work. It takes a lot out of you. It's a great, like, I'm honored to be serving in this way. But for me, for the work to go deeper, how do we share it with other people? How do we mentor, educate, support other people, help them empower? Because they also have a knowledge we don't know. They have a way of doing things that we don't know. But through what we know and what they know, I feel like the answer's in between that middle. So BADU's expansion is not on the physical aspect of the name. It's more or less the collaboration and connection with other people so they can run their own race.
Nice. So I want to ask you one final question. Someone who is at the beginning of their career and they want to create a social enterprise similar to BADU, what advice would you give to them at the start of their journey?
I would say write down the thing that lit the fire in your soul to start it. Write it down and go back to that every time you feel unsure, because that's the thing that's got you up to do something. So that's the thing that will keep you going. So I'll just say, write it down. What was wrong and why did you get up and say, I'm going to do something about it? That's the first thing. The next thing is get mentors.
Yeah.
Be willing to learn. Like, get different sections of mentors. Don't just have one person mentor because they're in your community and they reflect you. You can have that. That's really good. But go to different communities, go to different places and learn.
Yeah.
And then just be willing and excited about failing and learn about yourself.
It's amazing. Yeah, no, I think BADU is doing an amazing work, as I said to you, and you know, if this could inspire someone to create the next BADU, then, you know, we'll definitely be in a much better place. But I feel like that's a perfect way to kind of end the conversation. I appreciate your time and sharing your career path, and long may, you know, BADU continues to grow. But really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.